Okay. Hello, everybody. All right, please were joined. Hello, everybody. My name is Ishmael Beah. I am the author of A Long Way Gone, Radiance of Tomorrow, and this book, Little Family, that comes out tomorrow. But today is a special day because today, first of all, we are on Afrolit Sans Frontières because this is a platform that I actually would wanted to read this book on first. The book officially is out tomorrow, but I'm making a special reading of the book and discussing it with Zuki as a way to take the story back, I guess, to its origin. You know, this is a story that is set in an African country. It could be Sierra Leone, it could be anywhere else. So it is also fitting that I read it today, particularly because it's Sierra Leone's Independence Day, April 27th, 1961, we gain independence, and so we are, it's our Independence Day. So I'm going to read a little bit of this book, and then Zuki is going to join and we're going to have a conversation. So the premise of the book is basically about five characters. And the main character is a young woman who's 18 when the book starts. And these five characters live in an abandoned plane, a relic of their country's history. And they are trying to define and find what freedom means for them. They come from various aspects of their lives, but together they're basically trying to just create a little family and live as freely as possible. So this also came from the question I was asking to myself: how do you live as freely as possible in any African country currently as a young person, with sort of the competing push and pull of tradition, modernism, other ideologies that are coming in? What do you hold on to? Which area do you? So let me read a little bit and we get into it. If you are to walk toward a field that lies at the edge of the small town of Foloya, when the sun is awake in the sky, you will hear the breeze whistling through the grasses, parting the dry and green strands as it makes its way to you. Or maybe you will think it is the rustling of someone hiding under the vast shrubs. At the end of the field, your eyes will light upon the face of a boy among the grasses, peering intently at something. You try to see what it is by following the trail of his gaze, but you see nothing. "Hello," you say. The boy does not respond, only narrows his eyelids against the wind. You stare back at his face, in which youth is steeped in something serious and old, in stories you want to know. You try your luck again. "Good morning." You do not know what else to say. Caution trumps curiosity. You sense that you should not move closer. He does not respond. In fact, nothing about his demeanor suggests that he is even aware of your presence. Your eyes search his face one last time. Then you give a sigh and continue on your way. Yet as you go, you glance back, still hopeful of an answer. And then, just as you have given up and turned your full attention to the road ahead, you hear him whistle immediately. Several answering whistles fill the air. You become confused. Should you move on ahead or go back to the boy? You are more aware of your fear now, but at the same time, your belly burns with cautious excitement. You do not know which feeling to pursue. While you hesitate, the shrubs begin a vigorous dance, but when you look again to where the boy was sitting, he is gone, without your having heard him leave. You set aside your fear and try all the pathways that are visible to you, but none goes any distance. Each time you find yourself return to where the boy was sitting, the smaller plants stretching to regain themselves in the wake of his human weight. So this is the opening of the book that brings you into the world of the characters, but it also questions generally curiosity that people have about entering the lives of other people. And so this family is trying to make sure that nobody can find them, so that they stay as safe but also as free as possible. So they interact with the world, but on their own terms. So now I'm gonna read chapter 2, just the beginning a little bit, and then Zuki will come in and we'll chat. So this is Kudimata, who's the main character, who's the young woman who narrates most of the book. Is the one that really I wanted to really write, because for a long time when I wrote my first book, for example, I did not write about the experience of a girl in war, for example, because I felt like it wasn't my place. But then I became a father. I have 2 daughters, and I wanted to write a kind of character, an African young woman who is herself unapologetically, who rise up to her own femininity unapologetically, who does not have anybody explain to them what's going on. So anyway, so here we go. Let me read this one now. Usually, Kudimata made her visits to the market between dawn and the first appearance of the sun. There was a pause that came at this hour, a sigh, when the waking had to decide whether to spend their day being useful or being destructive. Raffia bag slung over her shoulder, beanie on her head, this bright-eyed young woman of 18 with smooth, sharp cheekbones chose to remain suspended between the two as her circumstances dictated. Besides, she was drawn to the hidden beauty of this dilapidated place, which painted over whatever bad memories troubled her mind with the simple and intriguing brushstrokes of all that was on display. She glided among the traders, listening and watching as they called out to the passers-by, letting them know what they wanted or what was essential for them to purchase. Madame, I have a special gift for your lovely daughter. Or Mister, don't you want to go home with a gift that says what doesn't exist in words? I have just that for you. The merchants had sweet words for almost everyone, but when Kudimata passed before them, they said nothing. It was as if she did not exist. She was not invisible. People's eyes caught sight of her. But somehow she was forgotten as soon as she was glimpsed. Kudimata did not mind because of her invisibility. People spoke honestly around her about their fears, hopes, and dreams. Sometimes she picked up important information that way, information that made it possible to continue to live at the edge of the lives of such people. Some mornings, she simply lingered upon their faces, living in the emotions that they wore, some exceptionally happy, some pensive, some unthinkably sad. Imagine their lives helped her to stay suspended between being useful and being destructive, while turning to her advantage everything that happened. Now she watched as the fruit seller juggled a pinkish red mango, a yellow pawpaw, a green guava in the air before setting them on the platter as colorful as a flowered roll. Kudu took in the glistening red of the palm oil being poured into bottles, the deep green of the cassava and sweet potato leaves that were constantly sprinkled with water so that they didn't lose their freshness to the sun, the shiny dark hand that sprinkled the water, the head wraps of the women, so casual yet so elegant, the blue river nearby, the pink sand on its banks. She never tired of the pleasure of letting herself get swept away by such sights, delighted that their delight never grew stale. How could you not find in them some tolerance for whatever life threw at you? All right. I'm generally not one who wants to read too much, so I will stop there. That's Little Family, and then we're going to get into the discussion. All right. So I think I'm going to Zuki is gonna come on, and then we're gonna have a chat about it. She's going to ask me questions, but in the there we go. Let's see. I'm messing with this technology. Hold on, I'm trying to get Zuki. Oop. There we go. And All right.
Hi,
Aha.
Ish.
Okay, but I think I turned my camera the other way, so I need to turn it around.
Nice walls, though.
Yeah, I know. I knew I turned it around.
It'll make them good. It'll make that.
I know, right?
Aha. Aha.
There
Okay.
you are.
Eh,
Fantastic.
so some of us are going to survive this. By the time this is over, some of us are going to be great with
You'll
technology.
be knowing everything, man. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
And you?
Firstly, oh, happy Independence Day
Oh,
to
thank you.
you, to Sierra Leone, and
Yes, thank you.
Freedom Day to South Africa. See, I try
Oh,
to,
nice.
to, to match the colors of our
Look
two
at that.
countries.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Anyway, I really, 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 really enjoyed. I did tell you that. I sent you a message. I sent you an answer message. I said, I love this. I really enjoyed Little Family. I think yet again you did something really wonderful because you wrote it in such a nice conversational way. But for the first time, you were discussing. I don't know whether should we really call them homeless, because they're not. They're actually staying in a plane and they consider that place home. So what is the term you would call this little family?
I mean, I won't call them homeless, but you know, when you write something, people have the right to interpret it their own way. Usually they go to something that's familiar to them. These young people have decided to take themselves away from society so that they can be free. So circumstances have left them fending for themselves, but they've decided not to live in a community or not to live with certain families, but to live in this plane on their own volition. So I won't call them in that classic sense of homeless, but rather
Yeah.
they've chosen to leave society on their own terms.
Okay. I think before I even go there, I did tell you that I was going to do this. I want to go a little back. I want to go to the Radiance of Tomorrow.
Mm.
And the reason I want to go to the Radiance of Tomorrow is in the new book, one of the characters asks, is independence given? How do you get given independence in your own country? And I wanted to discuss this in relation to this, because in this book, you have a story that a lot of the continent is very familiar with, where people will stay in mining communities, or when diamonds or or gold are discovered, and then our governments say we are bringing in external investors, and they bring in external investors, and people get displaced, and the people who are supposed to be from there, were supposed to benefit the most from it, start suffering for big business. And I wanted us to discuss that a little bit, because even in this book, your main character is a woman, and she's there with everybody else, and and of course you do beautifully say right at the beginning that every story begins with and ends with a woman. And I wanted us to discuss that before we get back to Little Family.
Well, for me, I started writing, out of frustration, because the way my country was represented, the way my experience was represented, didn't have the necessary human context that I knew. But also, when I continued writing, I wanted to see people like me in literature. I grew up reading the Johns and this, and I was like, I want to see the Suleimans and the Ishmaels and the Muhammad and the Kadiatu and the Memunas in literature. I wanted people to see somebody like me. But my background is oral tradition, storytelling. My grandmother told me stories as a kid growing up, and my father and if I did something wrong, my punishment was to be sat down and told a story so that I could figure out what the lessons were in those stories. So I always see stories as medicine that you pour back into a human being to strengthen them for what life would throw at them. And life always tries to destroy us. One case in point now. So for me, I also, since my early people who gave me stories were women, and also just the tradition that I grew up in, I've always seen stories as birth itself, right? Hence, if stories are birth in a way, who are the best holders of those stories? It will start with a woman and it will end with a woman. So that's the framework that I have in my head. throughout my life. That's how I've been. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that. And the this particular story, I remember saying to you when I finished reading The Radiant of Tomorrow, about how much it reminded me, the situation that these people were finding themselves in, how much it reminded me of the women of Marikana. I remember I told you about that. But it also had parallels to a place that you're also very familiar with, the southeast part of, like River State, like in Nigeria. And it could be any country, to be honest, any African country that has had to deal with mining companies. But you, of course, you very much set it in a country you call Mountain Lion or Lion Mountain, you know, which is of course Sierra Leone. But I think anybody who read it could identify, any African who read it, and I just wanted to talk more about how, you know, in this story of yours, and in your new book, really, in Little Family, how your characters have so much agency, you know. We've seen a lot of how, you know, when African characters are portrayed, they're always, you know, they're either like this good or this terrible person, or, you know, they're not multidimensional. But you managed to do this, and I wanted to talk. How do you build your characters?
Well, maybe the way I answer that is how I write. When I want to write something, it always starts with a question. You know, for example, with Little Family, I was flying into Freetown, in the Lunge Airport, and if you're lucky, you arrive during the day, which usually is very difficult because the planes get delayed. You usually arrive at night. But if you arrive during the day, the scenery is remarkable. But as we were landing, I looked out on the outside of the window, and there's this old plane that's sort of on the side of the airport. That's just there in this foliage, but almost as if it's trying not to be forgotten. It's sticking out this little, you know, tail back there, and there. So, you know, and it's the grasses and the foliage has grown really beautifully around it. And I thought to myself, wow, that could be a really interesting place to write a story that and place characters in that setting. And the second part was that I was in Senegal. I was actually coming from Gorée Island into Dakar, and my daughter, who is now 6, was 5. My first daughter, who is now 6, was 5 at the time. I mean, was 1 at the time. And there were these, you know, men, some young and some a little older, sitting across from us. And they basically were saying that, you know, but how come they don't pierce her ears so we know right away that she's a girl? And I almost threw them in the water. I tried really to, because it was on the boat. Because so for me, I said that what business is a man, or to question how a woman should express herself, or a girl should express herself. So that really stayed with me. So I just thought that was the birth of the Kudimat's character. That I wanted to write a character that's multidimensional, that also express her femininity, her sexuality in the way she pleases, and her own way, and she's not gonna conform to anybody. So that's how the story was born. So usually I take a place, and then I spend a lot of time thinking about the characters, their age, their gender, where they are, and I just walk around. You know, I observe a lot. I just walk around, and I never determine what the ending of what I'm writing, because I feel like it limits me. So then one day I sit down and I just start writing. So I'm more faithful to my characters, because they actually they take me to places that I haven't thought about in my imagination. So I never planned out a story is going to go this way or that way. I just try to answer a question or an idea that I want to explore, and then I find a few characters, put them in a setting, and then I just start writing. I just start writing and writing and writing, and you'll be surprised the places that you go with that, you know.
You, I think I saw a post of yours saying that NAMSA was inspired by a young woman that you met, a young girl that you met during your UNICEF ambassador duties. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's one of the many young women that I've met. This young girl that I've met in Sierra Leone, and I've met countless similar girls in Congo, in Colombia, in Central African Republic. So the places that I've gone, for my UN work, usually takes me to places where people don't go usually, or people don't meet those kinds of people. So I want to bring them. So the inspiration was really the strength from young girls who have survived countless difficulties, but yet they're so hopeful, and they will give you a smile that's so bright and full of joy. And even though what they've just told you 2 seconds earlier was
It's
completely
heart-wrenching.
heart-wrenching, you could not bear it. So I wanted to show this character like that manages to become part of this new family because of things that have happened to them, and how they continue to live and how they continue to flourish, even with the background of all of these other things that are happening. So that's really, and I'll give you one anecdote. For example, once I was in Central African Republic, and I was doing a walk from, I was part of a negotiation to release children from armed groups, and people, the people who were doing the work were talking to the soldiers and the commander, and everybody was armed in this little village in Central African Republic. But across from us, there was this boy that just caught my attention. And the reason why is because I knew this boy was going to survive, because his imagination could not be shackled. So he had found a way to mold like earbuds in clay, and he had it in each ear. And he had also molded like a little clay with a smartphone. So he had it. And so he was standing there like shaking his head, listening to some type of music. I don't know what music was. But so his imagination, so in this madness that we are in, there's a boy who's gone somewhere with his imagination. So these moments really stayed with me. So I try to infuse some of these kind of things in the characters that I built in Little Family,
Fantastic. The other thing I wanted to check with you. Okay, before I even go here, I just wanted to ask you, is there any more pretentious name than Frederick Caddill Boston in literature? Does it get any more pretentious than that?
You laughed. You like that, no? I thought it was.
I absolutely loved it. I was laughing. I was like, oh my God, I have heard people with such names. But yeah, how did you decide to name him the way you did? I mean, you do tell the story in the book and stuff and everything, but I'd like to hear the creative process before how do you name your characters?
No, but for this particular character, I wanted to play with, I lived in Nigeria. My wife was working for the UN there, so I lived in Nigeria for 2 years. And one of the things that I've always been really appreciative of, particularly for Nigerians and other Africans as well, is how much they use their own names, not like John or Sam, But in my country, Sierra Leone, you find people, if they tell you their name and you have not seen them, you will not think they're an African person. So, and that is part of colonialism, that is part of what we believe it's sophistication, so we even begin to disbelieve in our own. So when I had started having children, I decided I would not give them any of those names, So, but I know people growing up that had those names, One was even called like Lightfoot Boston, and it's like, really, man, like your parents did that. So for me, when I wanted to have a character that has a family that has subscribed so much to the idea of colonialism, but also that family is so complicated that they want to hold on to the tradition that even the children have started to rebel because of how the imposition is to be as Western as possible, to show a sign of sophistication. So I really wanted to plant a character that is interesting, whose name has all of those things, but whose actions and behavior is not, who's a very cosmopolitan African kid, but yet they carry this burden, as our friends make fun of her in the narrative, they carry this colonial burden of a name, like, even a grandmother would make fun of him and say, if, in order for anybody to call your name, they may have to cook 2 cups of rice and eat it just to pronounce it.
They just call him grandson.
So.
All right. Your five members of the little family. I found it interesting that, you kind of tease us, and you, at the beginning, where we kind of think that you're going to give us their backstory, but you actually don't do, you know? And then you just give us a narrative, and it's very much about the present. And, you know, at first I was like, okay, I want to know what this person's story is, this person's story is. But, you know, at the end of the book, I didn't care, you know? I just wanted to know about them in the present. Had you, like, given them backgrounds and whatever, in order for them to be the way they are? Because, you know, Eliman, for instance, is, you know, you hear that he's refined, he knows how to whatever, you know, he's had a certain upbringing, but it never really comes out. So the only person whose life that we kind of get a glimpse of is when we have that little episode of Glue, you know? Otherwise, you never have. See, y'all not even gonna know what I'm saying, but that's why you need to get the books. But yeah, that little episode of Glue, that's when you realize, oh, there's this little backstory. But otherwise, you don't ever tell anybody's backstory.
Yes.
What was the reason behind that? Did you think it was going to be too big a book, or was it more important for you to focus it on that very present?
Well, I think I was actually honoring the story itself, because I think, first of all, I think you have to believe and know that your readers are going to be smart enough to draw certain conclusions. So you don't need to tie everything up and give them all the backstories and layers and stuff, you know? I believe that as human beings, as characters, particularly that I created in this book, how they behave currently says a lot about what their past is. So I did not need to give you a heavy load of it. For example, if we're walking down the street and a car screeches past us, both of us will have different reactions. Those reactions are not based on that moment. They're based on layers.
Based on our history, yeah.
Exactly. So I thought if I show them how they are in the moment, you would draw your own conclusions about what their past is. And that would actually make the book even better, because it becomes yours as well. Because you could be like, well, I think Frederica Boston is this and that. And you will be right. Absolutely. Because you've met somebody who's cosmopolitan like that. So if I were to give you a nice little thing of who he is, I limit the characters.
And you limit the reader's imagination, really.
Exactly.
As well. Yeah.
And only leaving you with the character itself, I limit that, because I give you the character who's done full everything, and then you kind of know. But you wonder, you walk around days wondering what it was in. So then it becomes part of your own imaginative space. The character inhibits you that way. So I'm never one who's too much into giving background, because I think it can be too heavy. And your reader can also begin to feel like you don't trust their intelligence enough to draw.
Exactly.
You know, I'm a reader. I'm more of a reader. I'm a writer, but I read more than I write, actually. So I also don't like that, you know. So I don't like that also. So when I'm also thinking that, okay, if I was a reader reading this book, I would not want to feel like I'm not intelligent enough to understand, you know.
On this Independence/Freedom Day, one of the more interesting things that perhaps I can share with the audience is how you have a community asking whether something is stealing or is corruption. And then they decide, because politicians call it corruption, then when they take something, they say, oh, I just corrupted a cell phone. I wanted you to talk about that, because I really enjoyed that.
No, this idea, I built this word up and that idea, but also it comes from observation. If you look in West Africa particularly, we have Creole in Sierra Leone, which is not the French Creole, it's K-I-R-O. Or we have, some people call it Pidgin. You have Pidgin in Nigeria. We have, you know. So basically, these languages are alive, and they're always changing. So for example, if I haven't been home for a month, and I go back to Sierra Leone, I have to catch up with the new lingo.
Catch up with the new terms, yeah.
Exactly, because the language, you know, is the same in Swahili, different thing, is that it's always growing, and it's always based on what's happening on the ground. So I wanted to create this world where this language was kind of alive and evolving as the characters evolve as well, as the characters. So the idea of this was basically that the discussion was that, you know, when politicians steal, they always say, oh, well, he's corrupted, you know, he's corrupt, you know. But if a person in a small village goes somewhere and they steal a cup of rice, they say he stole the rice. Right?
Yes.
So the characters were having this discussion. Well, if the leaders of our countries, when they steal, they don't call it stealing, they call it corruption. We too, when we steal, we're gonna call it corruption.
We're gonna call it corruption.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we're gonna even make it into a verb, you know. So we're gonna be like, oh, I just corrupted a chain yesterday, you know. So it becomes part of the new language, you know.
Absolutely. The other thing that you do very well, and I think from your first book right through to all the, you know, to this final one, Little Family, is, you know, part of the reason why I like stories, whether they're theater or movies or books or whatever art form, is to be entertained as well as to be educated. And I learned so much while I was reading your book, like the history of Sierra Leone. I learned about Mangasewa, I learned about Momoja, you know, it was just amazing for me. So I wanted to say thank you for that, because it's one of those things where after I finished reading, I went and I was like going to Google and checking, and I think it's a great thing for any writer to do. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I always have this little, I always, when I write, you know, I create this world through fiction, I always find a way to insert little bits of history here and there within the characters, or even so that people who read it outside, but also those in Sierra Leone, can rethink of their history again. We can begin to understand our brilliance, our power, you know, that we've always had these things in us, you know, that these are not new frontiers for us to show brilliance. These have always existed, and people resisted during colonialism. They didn't just wait for everybody to come, because
for everybody else,
it always looked like those guys came over the boat and everybody was like, oh, okay, take over everything, we're here, you know? You know what I mean? So I always try to insert some of these things for people to understand that they were resistant. There are people who were brilliant. There have always been remarkable talent on the continent. It's in our history, and often we forget. Even sometimes people think about, oh, critical thinking. Critical thinking is part of African thinking. It's in our stories. When you're told stories, they're always, you have to figure out the meaning. You battle with words, you know. This is all part of who we are, you know. So I always insert these little pieces almost around and sprinkle them around in the stories, you know.
And it always absolutely makes your stories very relatable and beautiful, and something that a reader, you know, is empowered afterwards, and it's beautiful. But talking about critical thinking, Shadrach the Messiah. Now, I was thinking about him because in every country that I've ever stayed in, whether it's Zim or South Africa or Kenya, even like when I visited Ghana or Nigeria, there is always a character who people in the community say, he went mad because he read too much book. And that's Shadrach the Messiah. Can you tell me the philosophy behind creating the character of Shadrach the Messiah?
Well, I kind of want to create like a mad genius in a way, but like has lost the bones of his head completely. Exactly like you say, you find these characters all over the African landscape, right? Where there are these people just spouting this knowledge, but they do it so much that people even stop listening to them, or sometimes people don't want to be reminded by certain things, and they always prick at the little things that we don't want to remember, right? So they're
to think about.
Yeah, so they're like these smart people. So basically, this character, I brought him in as a way to sort of like a sway between history and the present, and how people are dealing with the present. So he's kind of the anchor between those, but he's able to be really sort of say what he feels when he feels, you know, and disrupt the status quo, you know. So for example, which we've all seen, you know, one of the scenes with Shadrach the Messiah is that he sees one of these self-proclaimed prophets that we have around the African continent again, who's basically baptizing, dunking people in the water, but he's asking them for money, you know.
Yeah.
So Shadrach the Messiah disrupts him by saying that, oh, this guy dunked me in the water last time and all I tasted was salt water. Since then, nothing has happened in my life, you know.
I know.
So then he tries to chase him, but then he gives him a very old coin that's no longer in circulation. And so then the prophet obviously looks at the coin before he baptizes you. So which is also questionable. So I'm trying to unravel certain things to show the past through a little bit of comedy, through a little bit of laughter, but through this really brilliant human being who's kind of gone off the reservation because he's too brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
So you see that, but he's a very lovely character. It was a delight to write. But
Oh, he's delightful.
Shadrach comes from the Bible also. There's a Shadrach in the Bible. I'm not actually Christian, but I read the Bible.
Okay.
Actually, I am Christian also, and Muslim, and Jewish, and many things. Anyway.
Yes, and all those other religions. There's a
Exactly.
question here from Deborah. Hi, Deborah. He asked, what inspired the title of Long Way Home?
A long way gone. Well, when I'd written the book, actually, I had many titles, you know, and none of them were quite working. And so it's usually what I do. Then I decided to go back in the book and read it again and try to see if there was anything, a line, a sentence that's remained with me. And one of the things I remember, there's a part in the book where it says that we were a long way gone from everything we knew. And I also realized that was what the story was. When the war reached us, we departed from who we had been, whether traditions, whether our spirit, our spirituality, whether even physically,
humanity,
our home, the land. Exactly. So we're a long way gone from everything who we were. But I didn't say gone forever because I knew that we could also come back.
Come
so
back,
it was a long
absolutely.
way gone, you know?
Well, I guess to be an artist is to always hope, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't want to close it though. Yeah.
Remy, you asked about the characters, but I think he answered that. So she wants to know, it would be great to know about your writing process, Ishmael, please. Thank you. What's your writing process? Are you one of those people who like vomit out manuscripts, or do you take like 200 years ruminating everything?
I wish I vomited off manuscripts because I could just be vomiting all day. You know? I don't know. What I would like to be more of a disciplined writer than I am, but I'm not. I'm not as disciplined.
So you don't do like 1,500 words a day type thing?
No, I don't write like that. I write based on inspiration. I don't try to push the inspiration. If I'm not feeling something, I'm not going to push it. But when I'm in so for example, how I write, when I was thinking about Little Family, I mentioned earlier, I thought about the location of the story. Then I will walk around for maybe 6 months to even 1 year, just thinking about the characters. And I'll just make notes. You know, I have a pen and a paper. I can't do that on the computer. So I have my little book and I just make notes about the characters, how I see them, the description of who they are, where they are. I'll just make notes like that until I'm into their world. And then one day I will just sit and I will just start writing. And then I will stop. The story will take possession of me in a way that is almost like
you just need to I know.
Yeah, like I need to get it out.
When you start talking with the voice of your characters, and you're like, I'm going to do that, and you're like, okay, it's not me, it's the character.
And when I'm in that world, if you ask me anything, I would just say yes because I'm so lost in that world. So I think my children have learned that when I'm in those spaces, they can ask for anything because then I'll just say yes because I want to go back into the world.
I think my son hears no when I'm in that zone.
Yeah, because you don't want to come out. So you just say, okay, yeah. So basically, then I write at night. I really write at night. That's the only structure I have. I like to write anytime after 1 a.m. It's really perfect for me when everything is quiet.
You and me both, dude.
Exactly. So I write throughout the night, and then I'll wake up, maybe take a little. I'll take a little nap after. I'll wake up, and then I'll reread what I've written during the day, because there's too much noise going around. I can't focus as much, and then I'll come back to it again, you know. And yeah, so. We're waiting for Zuki to come back a little bit. But we were talking about writing, and one of the things that I would offer also as a writer is that landscape. I believe that language should fit landscape. That for example, if I'm writing about an older person set in an African country, I'm not going to have them respond to young people as kids. They won't say you kids. The language doesn't fit the landscape all of a sudden. Let me get Zuki back. Okay, Zuki is coming back with us. So I try not to have, so basically I'll have them say you children, because older people, oh, welcome back. I was going on and on.
Yes, here I am.
So I was talking about how I'm interested in how language fits landscape. When I'm writing, I'm very keen about the words that I use, because those words would tell you where you are, how people speak. For example, older people in the places that I write about don't say you kids. You kids, they will say you children, or you boy or girl, or if they call your name, you know you have trouble. You know, most older people, you know, they'll be like, is that person's son? So I try to do that with the language so that there's a tactile feeling. You kind of can smell, feel, and touch the places and the spaces I'm trying to invite you to.
Remy wants to know, this is like a very important writer from Namibia, the only writer from Namibia, wants to know, how do you have your beard game going? What tricks can you tell him so that he can grow a beard as well?
But you know, actually, my it's just I don't do anything. The trick I have is that I don't put anything in it, and I don't shape it that much. You know, if it grows too wide, then I just trim it a little, but I don't try to shape it and make all that nice line, because I like it natural and rough like this. I also try to envision myself like great grandfathers. I don't think they had like beard oil or anything. They were just out in the sun and the natural oils came out, right? So that's what I try to do. So
Remy, Vaseline and E45.
Exactly.
Expert Mom says, I love Ishmael. I ran into him as he walked out of a lecture in Abu Dhabi, chatted with him a while. He's so real. And BC says same here. Maria Bayo, can you bring your question again? I seem to have lost it when I got out. Dr. Ndlovu, I need your question again. Maria Bayo wants to know, she'd like to hear more about the beautiful people in Little Family.
There are 5 main characters. So you have Kudimata, and they call her Kudi, some of her friends that she gets close to in short. And actually, this novel, I wrote this novel in many African countries. So the name Kudimata actually comes from Mauritania. I lived in Mauritania for a bit, in Nouakchott. And so the name Kudimata comes from there, and I really like that name. So I absorbed, when I was living there, I took that name. And Eliman is also a name from there. So Eliman is the other character. So Kudimata and Eliman, those are the two characters that are older. Eliman is 20, and Kudimata is 18 when the novel starts. And then you have Namsa, who is the little one of the family. That is a Sierra Leonean name. And then you have, we have Pindi, which one of the boys, and then we have Ndevui. So Pindi and Ndevui, these are very Sierra Leonean names, you know. Again, as I said earlier, these are the kind of names I want to see in literature. Pindi means night, you know, but it has a different explanation. Ndevui actually means life. So, but these are names that you find in Sierra Leone. So, so I wanted to, so these are the 5 characters, and these 5 characters are very colorful. They are extremely intelligent. They are funny. They basically will take you to places you don't expect. They're very unexpected characters. Absolutely. And that's what I wanted people to see. Like you said earlier, I wanted people to see the multidimensionality of an African person, because often it was just one person, you know. Like in my case, for example, my first book I wrote was a memoir, and everybody always think of me, I just D for my child. So you'll be like, I'm a grown man. I'm not a child anymore. Neither a soldier, you know. So it's always, people always want to put you in a certain box. I really wanted to write characters where, because some of us who are cosmopolitan African kids have lived everywhere, you can't put us in a box. We're everywhere. We live in different places. We speak different languages and this and that. So to the average person who doesn't know the African person, it's very hard to conceptualize that. So I'm trying to show that in literature so that maybe it can sink in a little bit more.
And yet, in a very crazy, beautiful way, you also show that despite the differences, there are also so many very similarities. A question here
Absolutely.
from Troy. How was it like moving from writing a memoir to writing fiction? Do you find the two heavily depend on each other?
Well, for me, I felt writing memoir was limiting in a way. I could not really play with language and imagination as much because you have to write the facts and all that stuff. So the story already. And for my particular case, it's a story that I didn't want to write. So it was very hard to go back to it because I knew the story, I knew the word that I wanted to write about, but it was too difficult. For writing fiction, I think it's the most amazing thing in the world because you can create a world out of nothing and all of a sudden it becomes a real place that you actually go to, and you can play with language and imagery in ways that are very beautiful. So for me, I prefer writing fiction more. But as with every writing, I think the common through line is that as you have to tell a compelling story that grabs people, whatever it is. You always have to use words in a way that it strikes things in people's minds so they can imagine themselves in the spaces and places and the characters' imagination as well. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's memoir or not. If you don't write it well, you're not gonna get the people
It's gonna
to feel
flat.
the story.
Exactly.
Exactly.
BC wants to know, could you tell us the importance of nature in your works?
Nature is very important. I mean, I actually think of nature as a character in everything that I write. Nature is not just something there. It's not a bystander. There, it's alive and it's a character. It's also, I think, partly it's because I grew up in a village. I'm a village, but I grew up in a very remote village in Sierra Leone where most people, even in Sierra Leone, don't know where it is. So again, and I've seen how nature behaves in correspondence to human behavior on it, right? For example, based on what's going on now with the world, the pandemic that we're facing, if you step outside, I'm not telling anybody to go, but if you open your window and you can hear certain things more clearly than you did before, because nature recognizes what's going on. There's an absence of human beings going around. So even birds are singing louder, even if, you hear things a little bit more. Nature, it reacts based on what we do to it. During the war, that was the same. When there is a war somewhere, you don't see animals, you don't see birds, people, they leave. So all of these things. But, another thing I really want to say about Little Family is that, I think one of the interesting things of this book, because there was this, it was supposed to come out tomorrow. It's always been the date. But then when the pandemic broke, people were thinking that maybe we shouldn't have it out. But I wanted it to come out, particularly because it's so relevant to what's going on today. It's really how you form your own little family when circumstances beyond your imagination take hold of your life. What do you do? And the idea of this little family is not just the sort of standard family with mom, dad. It's about whatever you want that to be. All throughout our lives, we've had to create little families to be able to survive certain things, to be able to bond together. And more, we're beginning to see how we need each other. We're each other's keepers as human beings.
Absolutely.
And we tend to forget that. So this book is really about that, interestingly enough, where we are now. So I thought this medicine, as I said earlier, stories of medicine, I felt it was a good medicine to put into the world right now, this particular book.
I really do believe so too. In fact, I was telling somebody earlier that it's probably like one of the most relevant books for the times right now, because one of the things I was also asking, particularly on this continent, is when we're telling everybody to go on shutdown and whatever, where are the homeless people going to right now? Where are they being housed? Where do they go to? Maria Bayo also seems to have a crush on Eliman, as I do. And she asked you, but the beautiful people, why did you decide to include them in the story? Why was it important to you?
Well, so you have these 5 characters who have decided to ostracize themselves from society and live on their own terms. And I feel like the narrative would have not been interesting if they didn't have access to the world that ostracized themselves from. And but also just, again, what we're talking about is that we need each other, whether we like it or not. We're going to live in communities where the very thing that we don't like, we need certain elements of. So, and particularly with Kudimata, as she's growing into a woman, she wants to express herself, her femininity. She's not going to do it with just 5 people hiding in a plane somewhere, right? So she needs to go out to feel as a woman, to do all those things that are necessary to have her own space.
And does she feel?
You know, exactly. So
Tucci wants to know, do you find solidarity in the African literary scene or not? And also
solidarity.
And do you mentor younger African writers? He also wants to know.
Well, I think we're working on it. I think over the years, I'll be honest, over the years it's been hard because, you know, for example, on the continent, most writers on the continent or readers on the continent don't have access to writers or readers, vice versa. But I think we are working, for example, what we are doing now, this platform that we're on right now, Afrolit sans Frontières, it's one of those initiatives that bringing that solidarity back, you know, so that we know, you know, I'm invested as a writer. I said earlier, I'm a reader more than, you know, I write, but I'm a reader. I'm also invested in more writers coming from the continent, you know, more from different places we've never heard of. We have like the Portuguese Africa that we don't get much from.
Dude, I mean, we even have a guy from Namibia.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I see him there, Remy. And there was also another person from Namibia. There's people from Mozambique that are writers I know. So I think we need to work on that solidarity. So we know that there's this, you know, also Francophone. Most of us in Anglophone Africa don't read much of Francophone literature.
And
really,
Lusophone.
you know? Yeah. So there's that, you know. There's also
a question here. How do you bring your stories back to Sierra Leone and Africa? This was Maria's question and it was a good one. So yeah, how do you bring your stories back?
Well, over the years, well, right now you have my book in. You have my books now. I saw that you have Readers of Tomorrow on your.
No, but I, you know, I'm a big fan. I like your work, and I like
but what I've done, you know, the publishing, Kenya has had a good way to bring our books onto the continent because they've really invested in publishing books, also in Nigeria, in South Africa. But other parts of Africa has been slow to get my books particularly. So what I did particularly for Sierra Leone, because I really wanted people to read, when my first book came out, I was able to get the publisher to give me a lot and also to pay for the shipping of it. I mean, for the bags, because I had several overweight bags.
Pay extra, yeah.
As any African who travels back home, your luggage is always, you know, you're organizing at the airport so that you don't pay too much. But so I bring them when I go to Sierra Leone and I put them in libraries around the country. That's what I've done. Because I don't want people to buy my book in Sierra Leone.
We're almost out of time and we are about to log off so that Ishmael can save. If you want us to continue, Ishmael needs to save and then we can log on again. Please, by a thumbs up, show us so that we know whether you would like us to continue. So just thumbs up and let us know.
James wants us to continue. So.
Well, yeah, no, but James has interests.
And Remy...
James is what you call it? James is an interested party. Pelisiwe, you have said that you are interested in you said there's so many books to buy and you don't know how to get them, and because of lockdown in SA. Everybody in South Africa, we are putting out a petition so that on Friday, when they make the announcement, books can also be considered essential services. No. So please reach out to me and we can get you to sign on the petition. PEN South Africa should be putting out something in the next 24 hours. Maza asked, what's a question you wish you'd been asked? Okay, all right. No, sorry. We have to come back. We're logging off.
Okay.
Ishmael, switch off and then save and then we log on again.
Okay.
For like 15-20 minutes so that people can just get their fill.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we've got enough likes. Okay, so we're coming back. Just switch off.